Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps my channel out quite a bit. I also love it if you leave a comment. Today I thought I would do something kind of delicate with some curly cues in it. And so I decided to do a little kind of dainty ring. And I made a prototype, and I'm sort of pleased with it, sort of not pleased with it. So I'm going to make some slight modifications for this one. And I think I'll add a little prong set pink cubic zirconia on the top. So we'll see how it turns out, but I think it'll be pretty. And before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my primary group of supporters, and I really appreciate that. They're a group of people who are not only generous with their money with me, but also with their knowledge, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 11,500. We're heading towards 11,600, and that's amazing, and thank you so much for that. I do appreciate the kind comments and the financial contributions like the Buy Me a Coffee or the Super Thanks. Those things really help with a rising cost of materials, so thank you for that. With all that being said, let's get started on this project. This is one of my design idea books, which you can find on my merch store. I have found in recent times that when I sketch out an idea in advance, I usually end up with a little bit better outcome. So I like these two because they have this grid in the background that helps me to keep things sort of symmetrical, which is not necessarily my strongest suit. So I'm going to make, what I did was I pulled some 14 gauge square wire into much thinner wire. I took it down to 16 and then I pulled it through one more hole in the draw plate, and I'm not sure what gauge that comes to, but I guess we can measure it. That's pretty close to 0.05. And if we multiply that by 25 point, let's see, 25.4, we got 3 decimal points, 1.27 millimeters. So it's about 1.27 millimeters if you're a metric person. And so on my prototype, let me show it to you. This is what I ended up with. And I like it in general, but I'm not super happy with the inconsistencies in the loops. So I'm going to try and neaten that up a little bit. I balled up the ends on all of these when I was making them. This time I'm going to file them to a point and then maybe rejoin them where they come together so you don't have any pokey stuff. And like I said, I have a prong setting that I made for CZ. Here's a little stone. It's a little 5mm CZ. And then I made a little basket setting for it. If you're interested in learning how to make this basket setting, I have a video about that. I'll put a link right up there for you. So I'll set that to the side for now, but we'll mount him on one of these little swirls probably after we're done making the ring. But like I said, we're going to start with, I think if you look at it, if we go from here all the way to here, we can get that in one single piece and then add these little loops on the sides, which is what I did on this one here. So, and that worked out pretty well except for the inconsistencies. And then I doubled it basically, and I flipped it over and faced it the other way. And that gives me, from here to here, it turned out to be about a size 7, 7.5, which is kind of where I was shooting for. So you could make the pattern a little bit stretched out or scrunched up, or repeat it a third time if you wanted to in order to get a bigger ring. But you start getting up from here to here and it's about a size 11. So I'm going for about a 7.5. Alright, so the way that I measured for the length on this piece is I took a piece of 18 gauge round and I shaped it so it fit that. And it came out to be about this long. Actually, when I was done, I cut it off to be about like that long, and it was just about the right size. So we use this as a guide to cut ourselves 2 pieces of this 16 gauge, slightly smaller than 16 gauge square wire, and then we'll use those for our 2 main components. sure that they're pretty close to the same length. If you haven't visited my merch store lately, I just finally released my 2023 sketchbook, which is a guide to all of the videos that I put out both on YouTube and Patreon in 2023. So it's a pretty sizable ebook, and it has a page for each one, which includes a picture of the drawing that I made initially, a picture of the final product, a list of the materials you need to make the project, some notes that I made regarding whether it was easy, hard, which things I had problems with, stuff like that. And then finally a live link right to the video. The ones that go to the Patreon videos, of course, you have to be a member of Patreon to see at the level 2 tier or above. Okay, so I think my first step, like I said, I'm going to taper all these to a point. So I'm going to file this gradually down to a point on each end. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm going to use my bail making pliers to get these started. Oh, by the way, I measured this to about 6 millimeters wide, and I was trying to keep everything kind of contained within that width in order to keep things consistent. So we'll continue to do that. Square wire has a tendency to twist on you a little bit, and so I'll be periodically correcting that twist with my various types of pliers. What do you think? That looks pretty good. So I can kind of use this as a template. And get this curve going. However, like I said, it's going to try and twist on me a little bit there, so I like the way square wire looks better than round wire on a lot of things, and that's why I use it so much. But it does create its own issues sometimes. Like that. I think, based on how this is looking, I'm going to take just a little bit off of the end of this because it's slightly too long. I think that's pretty good. That's a little more consistent than last time. So now I need to cut some shorter pieces, or actually, you know what the easiest way to do it is while it's attached to the longer piece, file it to a point, and then we'll curve it, and then we can figure out how big a piece to cut, I think, and at the angle to cut it in order to get it to flow right out of there. So that'll be our next step. We do this one first. Sometimes what I'll do in order to get measurements just right, I do that and then position this above it. That'll allow me to have a pretty precise measurement of where that should be cut off. Right there. So I can cut it off a little big and then file it down to that. That's pretty good. So I'm going to make a mark right there so I know just about where that's going to be attached. Okay. And I think let's solder that one on just so we have it in place, and then we'll move on to another one. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder pretty much for everything, and that's what that looks like. And I use a liquid flux. I'm currently using some mighty flux, which I usually dribble on anymore. Sometimes I'll spray it on with a sprayer. It's going to go about like that. And I already have a few pieces of this solder over here. I do what's called pick soldering a lot, and that's where I use a soldering pick, which is usually either tungsten or titanium. This one's titanium. And I'll pick up a little bit of solder and I'll place it right where it goes when the soldering temperature is reached. So I find that to be a super efficient way to do things. If you're interested, I have a video up there about how to do it, so check that out. That's a worthwhile skill to learn, I think. Thanks to those of you who've already bought the ebook. That's looking pretty good. So should we do the next one? Sometimes when I'm doing something this small, I'll clamp it in my miter vise jig. These are great little tools. I'm debating about whether to solder those two together or not. It might make it more consistent because when you go to bend it around the ring mandrel, it's going to stretch the proportions out a little bit. So I'm going to try to avoid that. I think we'll probably solder it. So I'm using pretty small pieces of solder, not very big. If you're new to this, something this dainty might not be the best starting project. Maybe a little bit. So you've had a little bit of soldering practice, you might want to do some easier projects. And we've got one last curve to go on there. So we're going to do the same thing. That's looking pretty decent. So I'm going to off camera make one exactly like this, and then we'll solder the two together kind of opposite of each other, and then we'll turn it into a ring. So I'll be right back. So you can see I've got two relatively identical pieces here now. Our next step is going to be soldering those together and trying to get them as straight as we can, and then we'll bend it around a mandrel and solder the two ends together. So. Cut a little bit more solder. Okay. I'm going to kind of start down near the narrow end of the mandrel. That's all right to me. I think I'm going to use my magnesia block here. I'm going to kind of push things down into it so nothing's likely to move too much. And then I'm just going to pick solder right there. And then we'll do a little bit of shaping on the mandrel, and then we can add that prong setting, hopefully. So. I do think I'm going to use a little bit of easy solder for the last one, just because I have a lot of little components soldered together here. I probably could do it with hard solder, but I don't want to have it fall apart on me and have to start over. That does occasionally happen. Came out a little smaller than I had anticipated, which is fine since I wasn't making it to a specific size really, but just should note that I was shooting for a 7.5, ended up with a 5.5. So part of the reason is on the previous one I didn't have any of these things soldered closed, and so I think with this one it wasn't able to expand at all so much, so I think that's something to take note of. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup filing on the surface here. See how it looks. I have to figure out where I'm going to put this thing. And I think maybe I'll put it right there. Or should I put it over one of these? I think it's most logical on one of these. Or in between them. Yeah. That should be pretty. I think on this one, file it a little bit flatter. I think I'm going to use some of this new easy paste solder that I got from FA Tools and give it a shot. I'm going to sweat a little bit on here, I think. So now that that's in place, moved a little bit on me. Well, it didn't fall off. That's probably a good sign. Feels like it's on there pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to pickle that and then we'll polish it up and I'll set that stone for you. So when I was polishing and setting and everything, I went ahead and polished up this other first one, which isn't as neat as my second one, but I think the second one's pretty good. So it's got nice swirls all the way around. Our prongs all kind of positioned around that. I tapered them to a point on the top for this one. But yeah, I think it came out pretty cool. It's delicate, swirly. It's an interesting little ring. So yeah, I'm pleased. Hopefully you are too. I'll take some pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well that was the curly Q ring. I'm not sure what we're going to call that yet, but we'll see. If you enjoyed that, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and take a moment and watch a few other videos. I have 315, 320 videos up now. I haven't checked lately, but There's a lot of content and a lot of different project ideas, tutorials on different techniques. There's content for just about every level, I think. There's some beginning stuff as well as some more advanced things. So check those out. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. And then before you leave, the last thing is check the video description down below. There's some important links in that. There's a link to my safety video, which if you're doing this kind of stuff, it's important to keep safety in mind. I am now an affiliate of Pepe Tools, if you haven't noticed me using some Pepe tools lately. And there's a link in my description, so if you click on that and buy something there, it helps me and Pepe Tools. So make sure to check out their great selection of tools. The other links are ways to support the channel. One, like I said before, is my Patreon. You can check out the details on the different tiers over there and what benefits you get from those. There's a link to the Buy Me a Coffee page, which helps with supplies. And of course, there's my merch store where you can get the new ebook that I just created, which is a guide to all of my 2023 videos on YouTube and Patreon. So it's downloadable and it's a great resource. It helps take you right to where you need to go to create a project. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.